Ben Jobeck. I am the Community Outreach Specialist for New Jersey Futures Funding Navigator program. And I am so grateful to have you today at our third webinar series, Debt is Not a Bad Word. Today we'll be navigating funding to address PFAS in drinking water. Um, we're really grateful to have people here today just because New Jersey Futures Funding Navigator program really works to find solutions for funding options for municipalities around the state and making sure our overburdened communities have a way to address a lot of these problems that are coming up that systems are having a hard time taking action on, right? Just a note that we'd like to have everyone keep their mics off. We will obviously be recording, and that recording will be made available to everyone after this presentation. And we will leave some time at the end for question and answer, so don't feel like we won't get to you. So write down those questions that you have while we're going through the presentation. I am really grateful to share this space with some fantastic experts in the PFAS world. And I will let them introduce themselves when they are going up to present. But we have Ali from Veolia, we have Ruby from HDR, and Kenneth from SL Environmental Law Group. I wouldn't want to not mention that this has been put together in coordination with Veolia, with SL, with HDR, with Jersey Waterworks, and with Syracuse University. All right, I will pass it off over to Ali.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So excited to be here with you. And thank you so much, Ben. As you mentioned, I'll just go through a quick little introduction. My name is Ali Pachuman. I am the PFAS program manager for Veolia Water, New Jersey. I am originally from Toronto, Canada. Go Blue Jays. And as a Canadian, I am going to say sorry a lot. So I apologize for that ahead of time. I'm being honest. I say sorry a lot, and I blame it on my Canadianness. And my main goal here is to just go over some of our experience with implementing PFAS to help you understand kind of the level of effort we've had to put through on it when you're considering putting in this system, and also considering the funding avenues and the costs you're going to have associated with it. So that's just giving you a heads up. I'm kind of going to be a primer leading into Ruby on more of the funding stuff. Next slide, please. Next slide. Awesome. Worried about the lag there. All right, as with any corporation, we have a disclaimer. If you think I can have a career in ad reading, I will read it out for you guys. Otherwise, I usually just kind of wait 20 seconds and talk like this and giving you enough time to read it. And as this being recorded, I'm hoping the lawyers won't be too upset with me. Next slide, please. All right. Now, I have seen quite a few presentations on PFAS in the last, at least the last 2 years, a little further than that here in New Jersey. And I can tell you for the most part, they all go through some version of what regulations are in place and some version of why we have these regulations in place. And the challenge I see with that is, as a society, I feel like we're a bit desensitized to things that are bad for us. These days, almost anything in the RMG can be considered carcinogen. And if you look at the labels and the warnings, they have a lot of them. So I'm going to try and do this in one slide and kind of have one core version of it. And if you need any more detailed information, I'm a geek when it comes to this stuff, especially when it comes to organic chemistry, as you'll see in a second. Please feel free to reach out to me. I love talking about it, and that's going to be a constant theme throughout this presentation, as you'll see. So next slide, please. All right. One slide, two facts. For any organic chemistry nerds like me, you would recognize the first fact as the carbon fluoride bond. This specifically is pertaining to the most common PFAS chemicals found under both the EPA MCL that's coming up and the current New Jersey MCL, and that's the long chain PFAS molecules. We can spend another 2 hours on the short chain and everything else, but let's be specific on the ones that already have MCLs and need to be removed from our water. Carbon fluoride bonds are considered the strongest, or one of the strongest, should I say, bonds in nature. That is why PFAS chemicals, PFAS molecules are considered forever chemicals. They don't break up easily. The quickest way we have now is just plug them into a really, really, really hot incinerator and hope that they break apart. So fact one. Fact two, as you can see with the picture on the right, that is a fatty acid. It is a big part of what we need to live, both for energy and for immune system, and they kind of look alike. And as far as your body is concerned, they are sometimes the same thing. This is many studies done on this by the Health Institute, and they just have a different bond. That is also why, based on the studies, they find that PFAS chemicals, long chain specifically in these studies, have a half-life of up to 5.7 years in your body. So you have something that comes in your body, stays there for a pretty long time, and you're constantly putting more of it in your body. And those are the two main facts. It's why it's, in my opinion, it's hazardous to your health, but also based on the facts by the health industry. So going forward, that is the kind of message I'm hoping to put out as part of our initiative. Let's focus on getting up to the public and having them understand it. Thank you. Next slide. All right. So going back to the meat of this presentation, I'm going to go over some of the key factors of the experience we have in putting in PFAS and some of the things you might want to consider. And it may not be what you think if you haven't looked into it yet. If you're already halfway through, I'm hoping you're either nodding your head and going, oh no, that's not how we do it. In which case, please reach out. I would like to talk to you and learn how you're doing it and collaborate going forward. Next slide, please. So we have two main goals that we strive for with any of our projects, specifically here with PFAS. And that is public health by meeting all the regulatory standards that are required and customer affordability. As I'll go through later in the slides, those things kind of sometimes clash together. But we've done 10 sites so far here in New Jersey based on the NJ State PFAS MCL. And those 10 sites have permanent treatment in them. We still have 3 sites that are using what New Jersey calls the phase 1 treatment on PFAS, which is more of a temporary treatment system, while we put in a more permanent. And I got to really hand it out to NJDEP on this one. They saw the challenge. They wanted to treat PFAS as quickly as possible. So they gave an avenue to utilities in which they start the treatment right away while they're putting in a more permanent system in. And they will work with any utilities. If you're calling in here from New Jersey, they will work with you on these challenges and the costs. There are many examples of them doing that. You can reach out to any of the contacts with NJDP. I have a few I can point out to you if you reach out to me. And one of their examples is, for example, the work they're doing in Woodridge. You can look that up. So they worked with us as well, and we were able to implement phase 1 immediately on a lot of these sites and worked through it so we can meet the 2020 deadline and put in the permanent. We still have 3 sites left to do it permanently. Then we have 18 other projects currently across the state that is planned for the EPA PFAS MCO. That is right now at 2029. EPA has extended that deadline to 2031. However, until Congress passes it, it's not actually law. So we are currently following the 2029. Next slide, please. All right. So what experience have we learned? In pretty much every situation, whether it's the New Jersey one or in New York or in Pennsylvania, you're going into technologies that are new. We are at the leading edge of this. Now, the base of these technologies are not new. In this case, like for example, GAC and ion exchange has been used for other treatment purposes. I put some in for Chrome 6 and TCP out in California. However, in the case of PFAS, the two technologies that had any track record when we started this thing were basically those two, GAC and ion exchange. However, when it comes to removing PFAS and its effectiveness, there are many other considerations you have to put into it. Water quality is a big one. The raw water going into your PFAS treatment, how much of it will actually damage your media, will either clog it up, will make it ineffective altogether, matters. And by bench testing it, by piloting it, it helps. However, like anything else, that eats away at your project time and your costs. So talk with your regulators, try and be creative and understanding of what you need to do to make sure you got the right media. However, as you'll see in a second, whichever one seems to be the best one in terms of cost, or even the best one in terms of efficiency, may not matter based on wastewater treatment requirements and real estate, as we go into the next slide. Thank you so much. So let's assume that water quality is not a factor. You don't have a lot of chlorine going into it that's going to mess with the ion exchange. You don't have any arsenic issues or anything else like that. Then you got to see, do you even have the space to put in one of these treatment systems? And one of them can be considerably larger than the other, depending on the media select. And then you also have to consider, well, where's the water going to go from my rinses? Because if you take GAC, you have to serve a certain number of bed volumes. If you take ion exchange, you have to do a certain number of bed volumes of rinsing before you can put it into service. Or in the case of GAC, backwash. You need to backwash it, otherwise you have to change out your media every time. How does that affect it? So we have many systems where we don't have wastewater treatment nearby, or there is no sewage system plugged into the site. So if we do that, we have to consider trucking in and out the water from the waste. So that made it very quickly choice of one technology over the other. And then the second one was space. Can you haul this vessel up the hill and down the hill every time you need to change it? Can you haul the amount of media you need to do that? Do you have the space and everything else available to take care of it? Those are the things that you need to consider. And we have matrices and pros and cons lists and lessons learned throughout all of this. And as you'll see, a common theme of all this is, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to work with you. Next slide, please. All right. So going into this, coming from my background when I worked for California Water a few years back, there was so much I thought I knew when it came to treating out contaminants. And I came here and I spoke with the amazing people they have here at New Jersey. They're working on this and they've been solving these problems. And there was so much I didn't even know existed. So I came up with the idea that the first thing I have to assume is I don't know what I don't know. And I started making connections with every single sub-department, utility person in this industry that I could, just simply to understand, hey, what is it that you know? What is it you've seen? So with that, if we go to the next slide, I'll go through the processes that has really worked for us as we've gone through this. So always be okay to look for a different approach, even though you know there's no way that's going to work. Because there's been so many times where there's something you didn't realize, even on your own method, that approach uses that you can use, right? And as I said earlier, the best technical solution may not work for your environment, right? So be prepared to look into what the constraints of that solution is. And a lot of times, it's nothing to do with the technology itself. And seek out as much information as you can. And I think I said it enough times, but collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. I am working closely with Jersey Waterworks, trying to build PFAS committee going forward. I am presenting to you today, not as Veolia Water New Jersey. I'm presenting to you as a consumer of water. And my burden and my strength is I have knowledge on what's in our water and what we are doing to take care of it and the challenges we face. And I am here to collaborate with anyone. And as you'll see on the next slide, please, I am available 24/7. So please reach out. More than happy to have a conversation with you, no matter who you are in this industry, or even if you're coming here not as industry and just thought this would be a cool slide to be in. I'd like to know your thoughts and your ideas. I'm working really hard to kind of get an idea of a single version of what the solution may be for for these projects and these challenges we're facing. So I'm very excited to see the next two presenters as much as you are. So I won't take any more of your time, and I thank you so much for listening.
Try that again. Thanks so much, Ali. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm really excited to be presenting to you today. My name is Ruby Wells. I'm a senior funding consultant at HDR. Since Ali gave a moment to say where he's from, I'll go ahead and say you can't hear it in my accent, but I'm originally from Australia. I promise I won't be doing any break dancing today. Next slide. And I'll also go ahead and just preface all this by saying, obviously you can only cover so much in 15 minutes. So please reach out if there's any detail that I don't cover. This is fairly high level. If there's any detail I don't cover, please reach out. Same with folks watching the recording. Please reach out if there's anything you'd like further information on. I'm happy to chase that down. So starting off, I wanted to set the stage by just giving a big picture overview of sort of the status of where some of this big generational funding opportunities, where these are. I know there's the shutdown is kind of dominating the news lately for good reason, but at the same time, it is important to sort of track and understand what these big sources of money are, what they were, what's happening. So the big one that we all, for our industry, talk a lot about is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as IIJA, or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, same thing, BIL. And I have a slide on this, the next slide, that breaks this down a little bit. But essentially, it was a $1.2 trillion infrastructure investment. 55 billion of which approximately is for the water and resiliency sphere. And specific to regulatory issues, lead service line, emerging contaminants, including PFAS, there's quite a lot of money out of that 55 billion towards those regulatory issues. The status of IIJA, as many of you are probably aware, it's kind of coming to an end. There's a lot of uncertainty, but we do think that even given the shutdown and what's happening on the federal level, that this money will continue to roll out. But it is, again, it's sort of in the final year or two. The next I'll quickly touch on is the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. That was $350 billion total across the country. Really flexible money came out during the pandemic, really flexible money, like I said, that the local governments were able to use however they saw fit. Many communities were able to, if they got in early enough and obligated the funds, they were able to apply those funds to infrastructure projects. However, same story here is that this money is also sort of winding down with the 2026 spending deadline, and we're seeing a lot of folks across the country are already sort of done with spending their ARPA funds, and we can certainly no longer access them. And finally, last but not least, the other big pot of money is the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA. This was not really, kind of misspoke there, really wasn't a pot of money. It was really, for the most part, expanded tax credits. However, IRA funding was also funneled through new and some existing grant programs. The negative thing I'll say is that, unfortunately, again, with the new administration, a lot of the unobligated funds through IRA were rescinded. So you might have seen some of those big, like the EPA climate resiliency grants sort of went away and things like that. So that's the big picture setting. Next slide, please. Trying to hurry up a little bit too. So I just wanted to quickly flash up on the screen this this example I had pulled together a couple of years ago. I know this is a different part of the country, but this was for Arizona, just sort of putting all of this money into context on what it looks like on the state level. I think this visually tells a really good story. You know, here we go from the $1.2 trillion total, you know, plus with IRA and ARPA, but around 1.2 trillion, you know, smaller piece of that is 55 billion. Then when you go all the way to the right to the state level, those dots get pretty small over the course of the 5 years of this funding. So I think, you know, picture says 1,000 words sometimes. So I just wanted to kind of put that in perspective. And for New Jersey, that number was about $1 billion annually. And then, you know, you have to split that among the different pots of money, drinking water, clean water, you know, and other funds. So it goes from sort of $1 trillion to billion to millions. So it's interesting. Okay, next slide, please. So, you know, one of the focuses of what I'm talking about here today is how the funding clock that we just talked about is not necessarily aligned with the regulatory rollout, specifically, you know, regarding PFAS and emerging contaminants. So, you know, as I just mentioned, IIJA, which trickles down, you know, into your SRF programs and others, that money is here now and sort of wrapping up. Whereas PFAS regulations are, as Ali referenced, sort of still upcoming, right? The compliance deadlines are 2029, maybe even 2031, and even later for your clean water rulemakings and regulations. So there's that asynchronicity. That's the right word. You know, they're not really aligned. But we still have to, you know, work to take advantage of the money while it's here, right? Next slide, please. So I won't get into too much of the nitty-gritty here. But again, it's coming to New Jersey now, focusing on New Jersey. As I mentioned, through the IIJA, nearly $1 billion has been allocated over the total 5 years that we're in year 4 now, to New Jersey's Clean Water and Drinking Water SRF state revolving funds, and that's through New Jersey Water Bank. For state fiscal year 2026, the intended use plans for both clean and drinking water were both published a few months ago, back in July. The expected total allocation for this fiscal year, this upcoming fiscal years, is $292 million, 111 of which is for clean water SRF, 181 is for drinking water SRF, and then out of each of those two allocations, $9 million for emerging contaminant projects, including PFAS, for clean water, and $123 million for, 14 million for emerging contaminant projects for drinking water SRF. And just the figures to the right, the top one is drinking water SRF, the bottom one is clean water SRF, I believe. And that just sort of shows how the annual breakdown of sources, you know, basically the funding available versus the uses or the projects, as well as the carryover. So you can see some trends there. Next slide. So again, just going into the funding packages available for through the water bank specific to PFAS for this current state fiscal year. Again, on the left, we have the clean water SRF. On the right, we have drinking water SRF. $27 million in total in principal forgiveness is available for emerging contaminant projects, and principal forgiveness is essentially grant-like money, right? So that's a hefty amount. There is a $10 million principal forgiveness cap per applicant, but after that cap is met, the remaining loan is 75% interest-free. which is also really good. And the remaining 25% of the loan would be at a AAA market rate. So really, really strong offering there in terms of a funding package for clean water. And then similarly for drinking water, the principal forgiveness is capped at $3 million. And the similar situation with 75% no interest and 25% of the rest of the loan AAA market rate. 18 million total for in principal forgiveness, so also a healthy amount for drinking water. I mentioned the cap, and of this 18 million, about 5 million is for disadvantaged communities, and the IUP goes into pretty, details about if you qualify, what the disadvantaged communities criteria are. So you can refer to that or reach out if you need more information on that criteria. Next slide, please. Just really quickly, there's this wonderful report on New Jersey DEP's website that I have a screen grab here on the right, Forever No More, and which really goes into a lot of the nitty-gritty on the status of the federal PFAS regulations and New Jersey's, the status, how New Jersey's sort of tracking the federal regulations and the timelines. But just at a high level, second here. Okay. So yes, so this report has really detailed information on the status of New Jersey PFAS relative to, New Jersey PFAS regulations relative to what's happening on the federal level. And I'll just touch on these quickly. So for drinking water, DEP, New Jersey DEP is strongly encouraging folks to be proactive now, even though the more stringent MCLs have not yet hit. And then just jumping down to groundwater, the groundwater quality levels and MCLs will be adopted once the new and revised drinking water MCLs have been adopted. So those two are kind of linked. For wastewater, there's a lot going on. DEP is considering PFAS effluent limits. They're developing a biosolid strategy, landfill monitoring initiative. So a lot of things, again, just coming back to this theme of regulations are coming, they're just not here yet. Same with surface water. We'll move to the next slide. So moving beyond the IIJA and, again, going back to this concept of the IIJA, it's here now. We absolutely should take advantage of it while it is here, specifically money that's going through the SRF programs, while these really strong funding packages are available for PFAS projects, especially. However, even if you're not quite there yet and you're still developing your project, because these MCLs and these limits have not yet sort of been promulgated, look to, know that the SRF-based programs, the general pots of money that are not specific to PFAS, there's still a really good option, right? And they're going to be, the SRF program, New Jersey Water Bank, is going to be here, well past IIJA, right? Look to other project benefits. Regionalization is resiliency, benefits to disadvantaged communities. These co-benefits can all boost your project score and your competitiveness, again, for this general pot of money. Other programs that are good for PFAS, funding programs that are good for potentially PFAS projects include the New Jersey DEP Water Quality Restoration Grant, USDA Rural Development, and then the Defense Community Infrastructure Program. Again, these are not specific to PFAS, but they all have water quality components and could potentially be a good fit if you meet certain criteria. Again, just coming back to this concept of looking beyond IIJA and looking beyond what is available through SRF. Next slide. I think the slide might have gotten out of order, but not a big deal. A really great opportunity for folks who qualify, who are either a small or disadvantaged community, is this IIJA Emerging Contaminants in Smaller Disadvantaged Communities program. I have the DEP contact there, Casey Lippincott. Please reach out to her or myself with more, if you have more questions on this program. The allotment for 2025 was 33.5 million. Again, this is an IIJA program, so it won't be around forever. So if you do qualify, it could be a good option. Next slide. And just wrapping it up, again, funding is really, it's tied to regulatory issues, right? So as we see with PFAS, there were those for IIJA, those specific carve outs for PFAS and emerging contaminants in general. However, as the theme has been through my slides, the funding is here maybe a little bit before the regulations hit. So one approach that I advise folks on is really focus on studies, focus on, leveraging the money to fund the studies that can then put you in a good place for, not only advancing your projects, but being ready for the next funding opportunity that may come, right? And then again, look beyond targeted funding programs. Just because there's, emerging contaminants or PFAS isn't specifically laid out in a specific funding opportunity. Look more broadly to projects that programs that deal with water quality, for example. And just, again, back to SRF programs, especially in New Jersey Water Bank. Public comment is sought, so please, it's really important to just stay in touch with the IUP process and really provide comments, be involved to shape future IUPs. That's it for me.
Thanks, Ruby. Hello, everybody. I'm not Lee Clark either. I'm Ken Sansone from SL Environmental Law Group. We are a law firm where all we do is represent public agencies in bringing claims against responsible parties who contributed to contamination that our clients are dealing with and are typically under some sort of regulatory mandate to clean up. And in this way, these legal actions help shift some of the costs of responding to these regulatory mandates and the presence of these contaminants away from our clients and their ratepayers or taxpayers and onto the responsible manufacturers. And I wanted to talk specifically about these efforts around PFAS, which my firm has heavily been involved in over the past, it's been close to 8 or 9 years now, and some settlements that have resulted in some really funding opportunities that those can present for those of you whose agencies or utilities are dealing with PFAS right now. Next, please. Just a quick disclaimer, I'm a lawyer. As I mentioned, I represent hundreds of utilities across the country, but these slides are not intended as legal advice. Next, please. Just a quick breakdown of what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about these settlements that are in place with several PFAS manufacturers and the opportunities they provide for water systems. And then I want to move on to what might be next, kind of in that same arena, other claims that we're seeing and helping utilities bring now against these same manufacturers over impacts to resources besides drinking water. Next, please. This may be familiar or at least ring a bell with some of you. There were so many claims filed against the manufacturers of PFAS and products that contain it, specifically firefighting foam, in different parts of the country. And this all started about 8 or 9 years ago, that All of these cases were consolidated into a single proceeding, which is known as a multi-district litigation, or MDL. And because much of the PFAS that gets into the environment comes from firefighting foam, this was called the aqueous film forming foams, or AFFF MDL. And this MDL contains many different kinds of claims, not just claims by public water systems, but private well owners, individuals who claim to have gotten sick or in some cases died from exposure to PFAS, owners of property where the soil is contaminated with PFAS, and the list goes on. However, the focus in the early days of this MDL was on the public water system cases. And as a result of our work on those cases, there were settlements that were reached between two of the bigger manufacturers of PFAS and products containing it, and that's 3M and DuPont, on behalf of all public water systems across the country. And this happened, as you can see, in the summer of 2023. Next slide, please. So here are the very high level details of these settlements here. You can see that they put a lot of money into the pockets, we hope, of public water systems across the country. In particular, 3M settlement is between 10 and $12.5 billion. DuPont's is smaller to that, owing to DuPont's smaller role in making PFAS and PFAS containing products. But very importantly, you can see here, these settlements are only for public water systems. They do not provide any recovery for other kinds of impacts. So municipality obviously may have other kinds of impacts from PFAS. These settlements don't really affect those kinds of impacts at all. And you can see on the bottom here, one of the other things that these settlements do is provide some money to test for PFAS, probably less relevant if you're in a state like New Jersey, which has had its own MCLs in place for a while. But in other parts of the country where testing has not really occurred yet, one of the many benefits that these settlements provide, one of the many types of claims you could bring is for testing costs. But as you can see, you would need to do the testing very soon, before the end of this year, really by January 1st. Next slide, please. So how do these settlements work? They really are all encompassing, and we call these opt-out class actions. So every community water system in the country, regardless of when it had PFAS or what kind of PFAS it has, or whether it has PFAS above some sort of regulatory standard, really is in these settlements for the most part. There are some exceptions for very small systems or non-community systems, but really, if you operate a water system, it's very likely eligible for these settlements. And you're in these settlements unless you went through what was a fairly involved process to tell the court you wanted to opt out. You would know it if you did it. So if that doesn't ring a bell to you, you're in these settlements, and these are your only mechanism now for recovering any money against 3M and DuPont. Now, if you did happen to opt out, what that means is you can still sue 3M and DuPont. You haven't settled with them yet. So that's also something you might be thinking about. Next slide, please. So all of this here really is relevant to public water systems that did not have their first PFAS detection. Again, this is any PFAS at any level, anywhere in your water system until after June 2023. If you did have a detection before June 2023, you already needed to do everything that this slide tells you you have to do. And you would need to have submitted your claims already. The deadline for doing that was actually the end of last summer, summer 2024. But if you only detected your first PFAS detection recently, this is what you should be thinking about. You need to test for PFAS at every single source. So that really requires wellhead testing. Importantly, this is much different from the testing required under UCMR 5, which would have only required you to test at some point in your water system, because every single source is its own source of recovery under these settlements. And that's why you have to test everywhere, because you can get recovery for every single source where you detect any concentration of PFAS. I already mentioned if you want to be compensated for doing that testing, you have to make sure you do the testing by January 1st. Something else that's really important is that, again, if you're in this category of water systems that didn't have a first detection until after June of 2026, there's a whole separate funding mechanism under these settlements for money that you've already spent in dealing with PFAS, and that can be all kinds of expenses. If you had to shut off wells and purchase water, for example, or if you've done engineering studies, if you've started working on treatment plants, any of this can be claimed under these settlements. But you see these deadlines for doing all of this. It's really important. They are coming up this coming summer, June 30 for DuPont and July 31st for 3M. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about drinking water. I just want to really quickly touch on other kinds of PFAS impacts, and even really touch briefly on a couple of other emerging contaminants that you might be concerned about right now, especially in New Jersey. Next slide, please. So this slide really is a summary of all of this. The far left here, PFAS in soil and wastewater, and I think this was part of Ruby's presentation. New Jersey in particular is looking at both a limitation on PFAS concentrations in treated wastewater discharge, and also on restrictions um, on the use of biosolids or sludge that's produced through the wastewater treatment process because of PFAS. And we've seen certainly restrictions on sludge in a number of other states already. The state of Maine, for example, has an outright ban on land application. And these kinds of restrictions on how you operate your wastewater treatment plant due to PFAS are going to drive up costs significantly. And those are the same kind of costs that you should consider pursuing through litigation against 3M and these other manufacturers. And similarly, if you have a municipal airport or facility where firefighting foam was discharged regularly, the soil is likely contaminated with PFAS. You are likely to be called upon to at least investigate, if not clean that up at some point. Again, the expenses of that could be recovered in a lawsuit against these manufacturers. Solid waste, another issue, mostly because of the leachate that ends up getting treated at wastewater treatment plants right now. But certainly there are states where there's been an examination of PFAS concentrations in landfills. And I just want to touch on a couple of other contaminants here. 1,4-dioxane has been sort of the subject of a pending maximum contaminant level in New Jersey for a while now. I think there's a sort of a difference of opinion on how long it's going to take for that to be finalized and what the level would be. But of course, over in neighboring New York, there already is one. And a couple of other states are also looking into 1,4-dioxane right now. Similar story with 1,4-dioxane. It comes from products made by big chemical manufacturers. It's been the subject of lawsuits. So again, if you're facing treatment costs, and typically the treatment methodology for 1,4-dioxane is not the same as what you might be doing for PFAS or VOCs or nitrate or anything else you're dealing with, those are the kinds of expenses you could pursue against these manufacturers. And only in New Jersey, California, and Hawaii is 1,2,3-trichloropropane or TCP the subject of any regulatory action. But again, a similar story there comes from agricultural products, typically fumigants that were made by Shell Oil and Dow Chemical Company. They've been sued many times because of this. And so if you're facing TCP remediation costs, this is not really new, been around for a while in New Jersey, but you should consider the same approach. Again, I think I would just close on this note that you should look at the possibility of litigation against these responsible manufacturers as another way to pay for these improvements. Next slide, please. And This is really the summary here. Um, Particularly for those of you who may be dealing with PFAS in wastewater or in soil, to be proactive about it, to think about legal action. And, a concern about legal action always is how long do I have? What's the statute of limitations? That's always something to consider. So, if you're already spending money or planning on spending money on PFAS, you should be talking to legal counsel about that. How long do we have to bring a claim? And, another question that comes up a lot is, well, we saw class action settlements for water systems. They were open to everybody. You didn't need to sue. Why should we sue if we're only concerned about our wastewater claims? Shouldn't we wait for another class action? And I will just say that there's no guarantee it's going to work out that way. We've seen this with other contamination cases, particularly over MTBE back in the mid 2000s. The only MTBE settlements were for agencies who actually brought their lawsuits. So certainly, if this is something you're concerned about, these expenses, you should be looking at grants, which we just heard about, but you should also be thinking about legal action. Next slide, please, which I think is just a quick, and I just have a quick case study here. One of my clients was the city of Corona, California. They were pretty hard hit by both PFAS and 1,2,3-TCP. They brought lawsuits against both because they were really facing significant treatment costs here. And they were able to recover tens of millions of dollars through these lawsuits. I think that's another important thing to remember here. We think about class actions and kind of our own lives as consumers, and we get a coupon for $5 off, and that's our class action settlement. These settlements with these PFAS manufacturers, and same deal with settlements with these TCP manufacturers, have been significant. You can see from my prior slide, PFAS alone, many billions of dollars. So water systems that are significantly impacted here, and even some that are not so significantly impacted, can expect substantial recoveries from these settlements, and they should explore it. And I think my last slide is my concluding slide. Yes, thank you. This is really hard to read, but it'll be sent out, and my contact information will be there. Please feel free to let me know if you have questions. Thanks.
All right. Thank you all for attending today's webinar. We apologize for the inconvenience in the center of the presentation. We will make sure the version goes out is edited so you can access all of this information. Additionally, we want to thank our sponsors, Syracuse University, who have been fantastic putting this together with us, and also are a fantastic technical assistance provider. So Syracuse University's Environmental Finance Center. And I would be remiss if we didn't bring up the Jersey Waterworks Conference happening at College of New Jersey. It's a fantastic conference, really centering in everything that we're talking about, finding funding solutions, working together as this state's community to better water infrastructure and outcomes for all. So December 11th, I am really excited to see you all there at the Jersey Waterworks Conference. And we are going to close out here. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our panelists, but also to New Jersey Future, as we will move those questions over to the right people. Thank you all for attending today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.